Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Final Crisis. If you didn't know that Grant Morrison wrote this event without a single rewrite from DC, then this show is for you. Final Crisis, this huge crossover event from 2008 that directly followed a 51-issue weekly comic book series called Countdown to Final Crisis. With that being said, there are some terms and facts that you need to know about before we get into the actual history of Final Crisis. First off, you need to know what the source is. Now, the source it created everything. Yeah, it can destroy anything at the same time, and it's conscious, and it's everywhere, but it's nowhere, but it's also in a fixed location, and it's just really confusing. The source does have a physical location, but you can't go there because it protects itself with something called the source wall, and if you touch the source wall, that's it, you're trapped there forever. Superboy and Supergirl actually ended up trapping Superboy Prime in the source wall at the end of the Teen Titans because they knew they just couldn't destroy him. Next is the New Gods. Now, the New Gods are natives to the planets of New Genesis and Apocalypse. Now, these two planets are very close to the source, and as such, the inhabitants of these planets grew feeding off the energy from the source. As such, everybody on these planets has reached evolutionary perfection, meaning they are godlike in that they have super strength, super speed, super stamina, they are immortal, you just can't destroy them, it is insane. Now, the difference between New Genesis and Apocalypse is like the difference between heaven and hell. One is good and one is bad. This is actually heavily reflected in each planet's ecosystem. You see, New Genesis is this luscious green planet that only has one town which floats in the planet's atmosphere, so it doesn't mess with the planet's ecosystem. Apocalypse, however, is this industrial wasteland that has a class system, meaning there are gods and then there are slaves and people are brainwashed on this planet. I actually talk about this planet briefly in my History of Young Justice video. You see, the members of Young Justice crash-landed on Apocalypse and a whole mess of events would happen, but basically they would end up being tortured and they would have to find an escape. Now, what makes all of this very confusing is that both of these planets reside in somewhere called the Fourth World. Now, the Fourth World is somewhere in reality, but just outside of it, and you can visit the planets, but sometimes you can't visit the planets. It's a very flimsy concept. This concept was created by Jack Kirby, and it was never completed, but I'm sure if he did complete it, it would be one of the greatest concepts of all time. However, it is thanks to Jack Kirby creating these two planets that we have characters like Darkseid and the Forever People. Now, keeping in mind that these two planets are in the Fourth World, we can finally start talking about Final Crisis itself. Final Crisis wasn't called Final Crisis because it's going to be the last Crisis title. No, it was called Final Crisis because it was the final crisis of the Fourth World. Grant Morrison wrote Final Crisis not as an excuse for an event, but to complete some of Jack Kirby's unfinished works and to open up new chapters for all of them. Jack Kirby created some of the most revolutionary ideas in the comic book industry that we are still building off of today. There is a reason why Stan Lee is called Stan Lee and Jack Kirby is called the King. On a personal level, I love that this event uses all the Jack Kirby language that we all know and love, while still having that Grant Morrison flair, which all of you know I am obsessed with. The final thing that you need to know about are the Monitors. Now, some of you might know about the Anti-Monitor who helped out Sinestro. A lot. Now, I find the Monitors very interesting because they look after the DC multiverse, and there are 52 of them, just like there are 52 DC universes. If you put 2 and 2 together, you probably came to the assumption that there is one Monitor for each DC universe. And yes, you are totally right. Now, for a long time, the Monitors pretty much got along and agreed on everything. But then, in Countdown to Final Crisis, there was their first ever divide. Some of the Monitors felt like people that had traveled from one universe to another and had decided to stay in the other universe had to be eradicated, while other monitors felt like that was a needless act of violence. It was this way of thinking that led to the eradication of Dula Dent, who was originally from Earth 3. I will give Dula Dent her own history video one day, but for all of you that don't know, Dula Dent was Earth 3's Joker's daughter, and in Earth 3, the Joker was a good guy. So, Final Crisis would start when the Source would begin the eradication of the Fourth World, meaning there would be no more New Genesis and no more Apocalypse. The Source wasn't doing this to be malicious. In the Source's mind, this would mean that the inhabitants of New Genesis and Apocalypse wouldn't fight each other anymore and hopefully wouldn't hate each other anymore. However, this plan didn't exactly work out. It ended with the new gods continuing their fight in the afterlife and evil winning and gaining control over the anti-life equation. The anti-life equation, for all of you that don't know, essentially has the power to destroy all free will in the universe. Darkseid would then possess a mobster called Boss Darkseid and unite all of the remaining new gods from both sides, good and evil. It is worth saying it right here though. By the 4th issue of Final Crisis, Darkseid would possess a man named Dan Turpin. Darkseid's influence would slowly spread across the entire universe, stripping away free will one person at a time and essentially removing all the good that the new gods had done over the years. Very, very few people realized anything was going on, and by the time they did realize, it was too late. Then, Darkseid would take control of the secret society of supervillains and turn it into a terrorist organization. Finally, Darkseid had Orion destroyed, and only then did the heroes of Earth go, you know, I think something's going on here. Earth's heroes realized way too late. The anti-life equation had already spread right across Earth, and Earth became corrupt in all ways and all forms. And when I say it was corrupt in all ways, 7 weeks would be compressed into 2 days. Obviously, Earth is our home planet, so we don't like reading about it being destroyed, but then it becomes a whole lot worse when you realize New Earth's survival was the anchor for the multiverse. If New Earth is destroyed, the entire multiverse is destroyed as well. It looked like there wasn't any hope. It looked like Earth was going to fall, but then, out of nowhere, Barry Allen would reappear, and we had not seen him since Crisis on Infinite Earths. Around this time, Superman was called away by the Monitors to deal with a rogue monitor called Dax Novu. Dax Novu had become the Dark Monitor, and while fighting him, Superman found out the true nature of the Monitors and was disgusted. So the Monitors turned out to be this celestial parasite that fed off the Bleed. Now the Bleed was the force that separated each of the universes, but then this Dark Monitor turned out to just want to feed off the entire multiverse. The Dark Monitor would be defeated, but then Monitor Rox would just become a Dark Monitor himself. Superman sent away Captain Marvel of Earth 5 to gather all of the other Supermen to help him deal with all of the madness that was going on in his own universe and in the multiverse at this moment in time. Superman would be taken away by the Legion of Superheroes to help out with Superboy Prime, but then by the time he was returned, Darkseid was already reborn. Seeing that desperate times called for desperate measures, Brainiac 5 would show Superman the schematics for a miracle machine. At this point, things weren't looking good for Earth. A lot of heroes were missing in action or off-world, and the ones that were available were working with Checkmate to try and turn the tides on Darkseid. Eventually, the Guardians of the Universe would return a bunch of Green Lanterns to Earth to try and fight to save the planet, all led under Hal Jordan. Next, we turn our attention to Batman. Batman is a rare combination of a thinker and a doer, and he understands that Darkseid's very existence is a threat. Understanding that Darkseid is the only life in the universe that just has to not exist, Batman made a one-time exception, to use a gun loaded with a Radian bullet to destroy Darkseid. Batman would use the bullet on Darkseid, but then Darkseid would unleash his Omega Sanction on Batman. Superman would turn up too late. He would find Batman's corpse, but as he did so, the tables would begin to turn in our hero's favor. First, Wally West and Barry Allen would lead the Black Racer, who was essentially death, but for the speedsters, to Darkseid, and he would remove Darkseid's soul from Dan Turpin. Then Superman, Lex Luthor, the Secret Society, and a few others would be able to break Darkseid's control over Wonder Woman, and she would then use her lasso of truth on Darkseid's corpse, thus breaking the anti-life equation's hold on Earth's people. Obviously, things wouldn't end there. Superman would try and use the Miracle Machine to undo all of the damage that Darkseid had done, but then a rogue Monitor would turn up intending to use the Miracle Machine for its own purposes. Essentially, a whole mess of things would happen, but the Miracle Machine would be used by Superman and the Green Lanterns, and Earth would be restored to its rightful place in the multiverse. The Monitors would realize that they were too dangerous to continue looking after the multiverse themselves, so they banished themselves, separating them off from one another throughout the multiverse. After this, Earth would begin to recover and its people would be left with knowledge of the DC multiverse. Then, if you remember, Batman died, but in the very, very final page, we see a caveman wearing the bottom half of the bat costume, drawing the bat symbol on a wall of a cave. And that's where Final Crisis ends. I did skip out some parts of Final Crisis, if I'm honest, because I want all of you to go out and read it yourself. It was just re-released in trade paperback format, so you have no reason not to read it. Now, if you can't afford to get a copy of Final Crisis, that's fine because I'm doing a giveaway, but this time I'm only giving away one copy. I do just want to say that you're not getting this copy specifically because it's mine. You know the drill by now. You have to like me on Facebook and subscribe to me on YouTube and leave a comment down below telling me what you do to get through your darkest moments. Honestly, that's what Final Crisis is about. Even when things look their worst, even when it looks like it's the end of everything, a glimmer of hope will always turn up sooner or later, so just hold on. Honestly, it's by clinging to hope that we as humans make it through our darkest moments. And if you're going to take anything away from Final Crisis, please take that away from it.
It's super effective!
Okay guys, that is it for today. If you think I missed anything important about Final Crisis, please let me know in the comments down below. And also don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more history, and also don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. My name is Faust, this has been Exploring Comics, and it is super effective.